Hello and welcome to day 18 of INKtoberfest. My name is Lynn, or LV Handcrafted, here on YouTube, and I will be showing you a couple of different ways to use Kaleidoscope Powders. So I'm starting off with this gorgeous stamp. It is called Stargazer, and it's a white rubber stamp available at Forte. And I'm inking it several times because I want a very dark black. And then I'm going to take several of the interference powders from Maker Forte. Now, interference basically means that there are particles within the powders that block the color, in this case black, that is underneath the kaleidoscope powder. So ultimately, the result of that is you'll actually be able to get a different effect when you stamp these powders onto black versus when you stamp them onto white. And as you saw a moment ago, all I did was just brush on the dry powder right over the same stamp set that I used to stamp the backgrounds. And that is because I want to maintain the design of the constellations. And so by just giving it a nice brush and then spritzing it with water to activate that powder, it activates the binding agents within the powder, and it helps to get it so that you can actually stamp that onto your paper. Depending on how many layers you want or how much water you use, you may need to spritz or to dry in between each layer. I'm going to do this 3 times, and I'm going to just use some different colors. In particular, the interference colors that I'm using are Mercury. I've used Pluto. So you can already tell these are sort of perfect for galaxy backgrounds because of the planet names. I've got Neptune as well. And I also have Aurora. So, actually, I think I also used Saturn. So lots of really fun ways to use these. And because I'm applying with a brush, I thought maybe I'll try to actually create something of a comet. So you can actually draw a pattern, and you don't have to keep it to just streaks like I was doing before. So I'm trying to create that sort of whirlpool spiral effect, and it's really fun to actually kind of do a little bit of painting with the kaleidoscope powders. And don't forget, when you're doing this technique, you definitely will want to give it a nice spritz of water. That way it will actually stamp onto your background. And you can be quite liberal with it. I will also mention, though, that I used a black stamp pad that I did not mind getting a little bit contaminated with the kaleidoscope powders, because as you'll notice, I don't clean the stamp in between each of the different backgrounds that I'm making. And so I've just already kind of allocated that ink pad to this technique, or where I don't mind a little bit of that residual look of the interference, which is quite beautiful even by itself, without the additional layers that I'm painting on. Even in that, just the black background has a little bit of that shimmer from the leftover interference powder that was there before. And so you can see that when you stamp this onto black, it really does start to become vibrant. And this will be the third and final background that I make. And so again, here I wanted to go ahead and create a little bit more of a a pattern of sorts. And so that's the beauty of drawing it out. And I tried mixing the colors a little bit, which you could do. So I wanted to get a little bit of a purple. So I mixed a little bit of the blue, a little bit of the pink. And it can be a little bit tough to gauge what color you'll ultimately end up with because of that interference. It does look a little, or it can look quite a lot different on white as it will look on black. So it's just having a play, doing a little bit of trial and error. And there you can see when I stamped, hardly any of that kaleidoscope powder transferred. So then I just spritzed some more water on there. And then I'll do that as many more times as I feel like I want to in order to build up that, that color. And since I am stamping on just plain cardstock and not a watercolor card, I am trying to be a little bit careful about how much water I'm using, but I'm also drying in between. So here you can see the final panels, and look at how fun these backgrounds are. And I love that sort of galaxy, almost like the comet effect. And so a lot of different things that you can do here, and pretty simple or easy as a technique as well. And so what I'll do is now turn these three backgrounds into some cards. So I'm going to trim this background down to, it's actually a really, really great size. It's, the stamp itself is just shy of 5 inches wide by just shy of 5 inches tall. So really, really fantastic. I'll trim it down so that it can fit onto, I think this card panel that I have is just about 5.5 square. And so there's going to be a little bit of that white border all the way around. And I want to add a little bit more depth to the galaxy. So I'm taking my Distress Oxide in Black Soot, and I'm just going to go around the edges and darken that border all the way around. So you get a little bit of a vignette where it's darker along the edges and it's a little bit lighter towards the center. And so I'll go ahead and attach my background to my card base, and 5.5 by 5.5 is fantastic because you can still make this size card from a US letter size sheet of cardstock. So you just need to cut a piece that starts at 11 inches by 5.5, and then along that 11-inch edge, you want to score it at 5.5. So on my background before I place this one, or this one, I will actually ink and emboss right on top of it. So I inked up really, really well with Versamark, and this is a really fantastic sentiment stamp. It's actually from a Hedgehog Hollow subscription box from, I don't know how long ago now, but it's one of the older ones. And so I'm just gonna white heat emboss right onto my background, and it's such a fantastic size sentiment and a really beautiful sentiment at that. It reads "I love you to the moon and back," which is fantastic. And so really, really simple for a card like this. You don't need too much more than just that. So that is white heat embossing your sentiment right onto the background. Then for my next cards, I'll show you something else that you can do with Kaleidoscope Powders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix them and create my own custom embossing powder. So I've taken just a little bit of Kaleidoscope powder. I'm mixing it with some clear embossing powder. And I did not weigh anything. I was not super scientific about anything, but I will say that I aimed for however much of the Kaleidoscope powder I used. I probably used about 2 to 3 times that much in clear embossing powder. And so if I had to guess, maybe it was a 2.5 to 1 ratio of clear embossing powder to Kaleidoscope powder. You don't really need a lot of the Kaleidoscope powder, as you can see. A little really does go a long ways. And so I didn't get a really great stamping. I think I must have moved it a little bit, so I decided to stamp it over again. And so I'll go ahead. This stamp set, I think, is also from the same Hedgehog Hollow subscription box that the previous sentiment was from. And you can already tell when I pour the dry powder right onto black, you can already start seeing some of that green come through. And I'm going to heat set this just like you would heat set regular embossing powder. So here is one way that you can create some custom powders that then look fantastic onto black, because they do have that interference property to them. And so I know you're thinking that looks a mess, but make sure you let your embossing powder dry, and then you can wipe off any of that excess powder. And look at that, you have your black cardstock coming through, but this really, really lovely iridescent sentiment that is all from your Kaleidoscope powder. So really, really love that. That might be my favorite way to work with the powders so far, because you don't have to worry about a fixative in order to make sure that it doesn't rub off or anything, because it's got the clear embossing powder that it's melted and encapsulated within. It's really just permanently set. You don't have to worry about doing anything to make sure that that doesn't rub off. And so really, really fantastic, fun way to use your Kaleidoscope powders, because so often when I heat emboss my sentiment onto black, the only real color that I use is white. And so it's kind of cool now to have all of these additional options where I can heat emboss a different color onto black. I guess I take that back. Sometimes I do heat emboss silver onto black as well. But I'm going to add a couple of these pinstripe stickers just as additional accents to my sentiment strip here. And I've placed the sentiment a little bit further down just so that you can really take in more of that galaxy background. And a couple of Nuvo drops. I think these are dream drops. So again, they have that gorgeous iridescent look, and I'm just using my pokey tool to drag out some of the Nuvo drop to create little sparkling stars. And so you can kind of see a little bit of that iridescent sheen in the Nuvo drops, and a lovely sheen from the custom embossing powder that we created from the Kaleidoscope powders. And I loved it so much, I decided that's what I wanted on my last card as well. So I'll go ahead and mix up. I would definitely suggest, unless you know that you're going to use this really often and you want to mix up a lot, I would just mix up a little bit as you go, as much as you think you might need. And here I'm actually combining 2 colors. I combined the Pluto with, I think it was Neptune, and these ones that are where the powder is you can actually see the color in it. It definitely makes it a lot easier when you mix it to ensure that it's well mixed in with the clear powder. Some of the powders are actually just white, so it can be a little bit challenging, but that would be my other tip, is just to make sure that your Kaleidoscope powder is well mixed in with your clear embossing powder. And so I'll give that a moment to dry, and then I can just wipe off all of that excess powder. And I have another sentiment strip that I can then add to my my background here. And just like the other panels, I'm going to ink around the edges just to add a little bit more depth and bring the focus more towards the center of the card. And once I get this sentiment strip cut down, that will just about finish up my card. So I hope that you've been enjoying Inktoberfest so far. Let me know in the comments below what has been your favorite tip or technique that you picked up so far. There's still the rest of October with lots of inspiration and more techniques that the Maker Forte design team and guests like myself are sharing. Here's a final look at all 3 cards that I made. If you have a favorite, let me know in the comments below. Big huge thanks to Maker Forte for inviting me to be a guest during Inktoberfest and allowing me to share with you some of my favorite ways to use Kaleidoscope powders. Enjoy the rest of Inktoberfest, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye!